Ready for 5 seconds of quiet?
Never.
Why, hello?
Hey there. So I never am ready for 5 seconds of quiet.
I know.
Especially during prayer. Like, trying to find that, like, just to get the mind to where it stops enough to say, oh, hey, there's room for God in there. It's difficult. It's not an easy thing to do.
Well, we, a year ago, did something pretty profound. I'm just going with a different direction.
Oh, okay.
What did we do a year ago? We had a special outfit in advance.
We surprised the whole family by saying another baby was coming.
Yeah. How did we do that?
With the onesie that said, Happy Birthday, Daddy.
Yeah. So who's going to get to wear a onesie today?
The little girl who's just right-sized for it.
She is. I was right on the money.
You were totally right on the money.
I was like, if she's like most of our children, she's going to be a little bit larger than her actual age.
That's right.
And she is.
So is it a 6 to 9 month then?
No, well, it's a 3 to 6 months.
3 to 6, okay.
Yeah, that's about. Actually, she technically, I think, is in 6 months right now.
Yeah,
so.
But the 6 to 9 month stuff's still a little bigger on her.
Yeah, she's not quite there yet.
Yeah.
But time has flown. Has flying.
It has
time
flying.
Is flying.
Time has flying.
It's weirdly alliterative, but improper.
Sounds good.
Yeah, so I didn't mean to totally erode your 5 seconds of silence and prayer.
No, it's okay.
That was pretty bad that I just was like, we're going for this.
Nope.
Today we're having family over. We're going to do a fry up a little bit. A
small fry.
Minor fry up.
Not the normal huge fry like we've done in the past.
Yeah. I'm going to try a new recipe that we found from our summer of having, families over.
Which, when you see that it's cracked at the corner, that was me. It was not Terrence. Just so you know.
Oh, okay, yeah, because I totally would have pinged Terrence for that.
My birthday weekend.
You're going to have some of the crack in advance?
I've had a couple of potatoes. I've had a little bit of the pretzel crack.
Yeah, so it's a strawberry pretzel crack salad.
Yes, literally, it's the name of the salad,
what it is
right?
called. Yeah, so one of the families brought it over, and they are like from Tennessee, right? And kind of like a northern southern accent.
Dad is from Tennessee, I think. Yeah.
Okay.
The husband, I should say.
So
dad as well, but yeah.
Yeah, we thought it was like an ambrosia salad at first, but they're like, nope. And I'm like, what is the salad? And they hesitated to share the name, I think out of embarrassment.
Oh, no, so
that
good.
It's literally strawberry pretzel crack salad.
Because you can't stop. It's so good.
It's so good.
Yeah.
So she actually was so sweet. She sent me a thank you note for having them over, and then she enclosed the recipe.
Yeah.
It was so sweet of her.
It was.
So we're making that.
Classic. Like, that's what you want from somebody, right? I mean, we don't get that these days very much, because you would just be like, oh, let me send it to you in a text message. And that would be the end of the conversation, right? Rather than she formalized and gave you a wonderful thank you note for having her over, and then gave you the copy of the recipe.
Yeah, it's what you would expect, like, from a more, like, southern way of behaving. So I don't know if she is southern, but it's very southern. She had kind of a little bit of an accent.
She does have an accent.
Yeah.
I think she embraced, kind of that west of the Appalachia nature and culture.
Yeah.
It's a beautiful place. It's a wonderful culture.
I know. We used to expect a thank you card and that kind of stuff like 40 years ago, maybe. I'm trying to think.
Yeah.
I want to say 20 years ago, but like every time when you're old and you think that you're saying something, you always double the time.
Yeah,
so 40 years ago.
At least
40 years ago.
At least 40 years ago.
Was the way that you'd get a thank you and you'd get like the recipe shared, printed. It was just, It was so lovely.
Yeah, because you have to think 40 years ago was the death of the rotary phone, so that's about the right time frame. And things were going to dial tone. TGIF was starting to be a thing, Notes stopped happening.
Nice.
In the same way.
Yeah. So we're going to have that salad, lots of unhealthy food, 2 different kinds of cake, technically 3 cakes, but 2 different types. Terrence requested an ice cream cake, which Rosie also always requests. And then you like a chocolate pound cake. I know you.
I'm a sucker for pound cake.
Yeah, so I made a chocolate pound cake for you.
Yeah. Do you know where that comes from?
No, I don't.
So my grandmother, when I was 6 or 7, she had a heart attack. We went to Louisiana, and I was stuck in the waiting room with all of my cousins forever, and my Aunt Pat went and got me a snack, which happened to be a pound cake. I'm like, what is this? This is so amazing. I think I probably had like 4 while I was in the waiting room over the course of the week while my grandmother was in the hospital.
Nice.
That's where it started.
The origin story
That is
of
the
your
origin
love
story.
affair with pound cake.
Yes, manufactured Hostess pound cake.
Well, this isn't manufactured, so it won't live up to the dream.
It'll be better because it's not full of things that kill you.
Yeah, and for someone that adores pound cake, you really don't have a whole lot of pound cake, in my observation of you.
That's because, just like the name, when I eat it, I gain pounds. So I don't eat it very often.
Yeah, it's a once in a while treat.
Yeah, for sure. Well, I'm Dale.
I'm Kit.
Welcome to Catholic Hitch. We are a Catholic family seeking heaven and hoping to pick up others along the way.
Small talk. So in this segment, we talk about stuff that happened this week. So you and I had kind of a prolonged anniversary celebration, and we saw a movie before our anniversary.
Yeah, that was kind of nice.
So what movie did we see?
Sound of Freedom, and I have been telling everybody about it.
Yes, it is so much better than you would expect.
Yeah.
Like it is a good, first of all, it's a good subject matter. It's a hard subject matter. They treat it really well. They treat it with great dignity, I think.
Yeah.
But oh my gosh, even that aside, it's a very interesting movie. It's
Yeah.
really well acted
Well,
for the most part.
You know, the thing is outside of the mainstream media, like I think in the mainstream media, they can't even deny that it's a good movie, and it's been a box office success over the summer. But I still meet a lot of people who are like, "What's that movie? I haven't heard anything about it." You know, so if you haven't heard anything about it, you should really go check it out. It is not one for the kiddos, but by golly, it is an amazing movie.
Yeah, it's hard, but actually not as hard as I thought it would be. I thought it
No.
would be a lot worse. I thought it'd be like Gosnell, but it's not.
Well,
like that.
Gosnell.
And Gosnell was not as good a movie as this. Like
No,
it was not.
no. Production and storyline nowhere near.
Acting was not as good.
No, this is a step up.
Yeah,
for
this
sure.
was almost like a heist movie. Like that's really the flavor that you get from this movie is like
Yeah.
a really like a very well done heist.
Yeah, for sure.
So without going into any other details, I think
Right.
that's like probably a strong theme of the movie.
I'd agree, and I don't know. I think it's just overall, the best way I can put it akin to when there are those moments of intensity. If you've ever watched Chicken Run, you know when they take the chicken and it's their time to die, and they bring it inside, and all the chickens are looking, and you see a shadow, and then they turn away and go back to the chicken, and you hear the thump. Like that's as close to the extreme, because of the topic that we're,
Yeah.
because if you don't know anything about it, the basic premise of the movie is it is a movie about saving kids from human sex trafficking, which is not a topic we hear at all in the mainstream media. So rare. I mean, I occasionally will see stuff that comes through on like Fox News or the Epic Times that talks about our U.S. Marshals who they'll break one of these trafficking rings and they'll save 50 or 70 kids that have been enslaved in this. So it's one of those topics. It's not an easy topic, but it's something you just you have to see. Because I've been thinking about it all week. It's not something you can just kind of put aside, like what do we do? And I mean, right now all I can do is say you should watch the movie. It's really good and really well done, and worth however long it is. It's not maybe a 2-hour movie, maybe.
I do think it was about a 2-hour movie.
Yeah.
Yes, from what I remember. So I was looking at budget, like,
Oh,
versus box
it was like a
office and
two.
stuff.
No, it was like $1 million. Is
No,
what
it
they
wasn't
spent?
1 million. It's
Oh, 14.
14.5
Okay.
million,
Okay.
which is more reasonable. I'm like, ooh, how did they make that quality of a movie on 1
Well,
million?
okay, so 14 million, but they made, yeah, grossed,
$153 million so far.
so 10 times,
Yeah.
over 10 times in success.
Yeah.
That shows you just how good of a movie it is. And even when I read articles that are trying to quell the topic and say that this topic is not that important, and that the
It was
main character is
conflated and
lying about what
exaggerated.
it is, and it's not really a true story, all that stuff. They do that, but every time they do it, they have to say, but it's a really good movie. Like, they can't deny that it's really well done, even if they want to try to tell you that it isn't true, which this is not the case. It is based on a true story. I mean, even, yeah, you can go on YouTube and you can see the storyline
Yeah.
from the guy, Timothy Ballard, and what he does. I don't think you can deny that the good that he's doing with what he does, even if you have a beef with the movie. I think that would be like a movie about puppy mills and a man who goes out to stop the puppy mills. You can't say that puppy mills are good,
Yeah.
even if you don't agree with the story or the truth of what this person does to save puppies from puppy mills.
Yeah.
Is that a safe enough analogy?
That's a good analogy, I think.
Yeah. But that was...
We watched another. Actually, we've had like a huge amount of movies.
Oh, we've
for
been...
us.
Yeah, this has been a movie week.
So
for
I
sure.
threw my back out earlier this week. So on Friday, which is normally my like work all day, there was just no way I was gonna be able to do it.
Yeah.
So we actually had a sit down and watched some movies
Yep.
together.
Well, we had a luncheon date, which was
Yeah.
nice, with the baby. She did great.
So one of the movies we watched, I had heard about in Colorado Public Radio because it was based on a book that I think was written by a Boulderite, and it may have been produced like locally. I cannot recall, but it was called "How to Blow Up a Pipeline." And just the contrast, I wanted to watch it because it's like a sociological check-in for me to see, like, what are people in the culture, outside of my circles thinking about? Like, what is important to them?
Revolution.
Yeah.
Putting down the man and creating basically, what is it called? Domestic terrorism. Yeah. Yeah, that's what they want,
Yeah.
apparently.
Well, and it's so silly because
Well,
they conflated all the problems related to, like, a system that does rely on oil to, like, just blowing up a pipeline. And yes, that would hit, like, the economic wallet, but, like, the systemic change that we need to go through in order to get off fossil fuels, it's more than just everyone buy an EV. We were kind of joking, like, at the very end, it would be so funny if they were, like, being interrogated by the FBI, and the FBI agent was like, why didn't you just buy an EV? And they went, why didn't we just buy an EV?
That would have solved all our
EVs
problems.
solve everything.
Yeah.
It was very shaky camera. It had to have been a low budget film.
I
I feel like I would have shot a better, like,
But,
quality wise with
yeah.
my phone.
But they were intentionally, like, they leaned into the low fidelity aspect of it and the whole, like, 80s theme that they had going on. But the whole movie was basically just the premise of vengeance. That's what they were going for.
Yeah, they had all been harmed
wronged.
by
Right.
big oil.
Right. So
Some of them had diseases. Some of them were had lost loved ones in brownouts, essentially when AC was turned off and they died of heat stroke.
yeah.
Some lost their land because of eminent domain.
Yes.
So they all had, like, a chip on their shoulder. And some of them, I guess, were, like, originally well-meaning college students who were radicalized, and they were the originators of the whole plot.
Right.
These little college kids who were like, we need to actually do something. I'm tired of writing papers
You mean
about the change.
they went to college, they learned about Karl Marx, and then they became communists? This is basically what they did.
Yeah.
they revolted. They said that the man needs to be put down, that the people should have the power.
Yeah.
That's basically what they did.
Yeah.
It was a diagram of Marxism.
Yeah, it was.
Yeah. Which is true, because that's what they teach in schools. It is the truth. They don't necessarily come straight out with Karl Marx.
No, they don't
They
tell
come
you
around the
directly.
back turn with that. I don't know. Maybe now they do, but there are probably classes that's
I don't think they need
in
to.
vogue.
Yeah.
That
Maybe.
people can take. But yeah, so it was.
He's so old that he's cool again.
Right.
Good old Karl Marx.
Yeah. It had that flavor.
Yeah, and it was also kind of a heist movie, right? A little bit.
Yeah, a little bit.
There were elements where there's a like I guess when I think about like a heist movie or a sting movie, like both of the movies that we saw and we're talking about had that element where you have a plan and everything is going toward the plan, and then the moment of the executing the plan happens and you have to watch and wait to see if the plan is going to go awry or not.
Yeah.
And that's kind of like the flavors
Yeah.
that you get. So
They
both
kinda
movies
both had that.
Yeah. And there was also like a little bit in the How to Blow Up a Pipeline where they did not disclose the plan versus they did disclose the plan to us in the other. So usually if a plan is disclosed, you know that something's going to go wrong, because why else would they tell you the plan? And if you don't know the plan, then usually the plan is going to go right for the most part. And that seemed to be what happened in both movies.
Yeah. I mean, I will say that because I don't care if I spoil this movie for anybody.
It's not really worth
when
watching.
they blew up the pipeline, shocker, they did have a good model, because you could see all the plastic bits that flew off of it, but it was a great explosion.
Yeah, it was well done.
They did that very well done.
Well, it's so funny. In order to escalate tension, they had a situation where they, the barrel that was going to be part of the catalyst of materials to explode had to, for some reason, be jacked up next to this elevated pipe. So they're using, what are those, like straps? Straps, okay.
Yeah, like
they're
tie
using,
straps.
Yeah, tie straps to do this. And they're like, it has to be next to the pipe. Like, it has to be. And actually, they cause something, something fails, again, with the whole, like, escalating tension. As they're trying to approach that, like, the strap tears and it injures one of them.
Because you
and there's
never...
blood everywhere.
If you're going to load up a 50-gallon barrel and you're going to make sure that it has, like, 600 times the power of dynamite... let's use old straps. It's a great idea. We'll just go to the thrift store and we'll get old straps. It's a great idea.
Well, and then even you were talking about the model was really well done as far as the explosion that they created. It was clear that explosive did not need to be next to the pipe.
Oh no!
At the level of power and metal, like when it is, it's kind of got, what is that? It's a little brittle, right? Metal can be brittle if you are like dealing with temperature differentials, right? So they have a, air heated, like the same temperature as the outside air, and it's going to be exploded in, I assume, a higher temperature incandescence.
Yeah, but
so it's going to fragment.
When you think about, they had a singular explosion point, but yet when you see them blow up the model, it is strategically done across the entire thing with small explosives. Which is what you would have done. Like, why would they have... Like, they should have just built a bunch of little pipe bombs with tiny straps and strapped them on, and it would have been a way better explosion to do the damage that they were trying to do instead of the singular one. So,
I mean, there was... they wanted to create a situation where something could go wrong, and did go wrong, while they were attaching this giant barrel to this pipe.
I mean, I get the concept. The concept is, if you take, like, a black cat and you put it on the ground, and explodes, it doesn't really damage anything because it has nothing to go against force. But if you hold or put compaction against that explosion, then it has a much more volatile effect, damage-wise. That's why a grenade has the metal casing around the outside. The metal casing is what does the damage, not the interior explosive, because it's shrapnel. It explodes out
But isn't
through
the
compression.
barrel itself shrapnel and going to fly up and hit the pipe?
It basically would have just blown in the middle of the pipe and the oil would have just started dribbling out, like in a 15 or 20 foot hole, but it wouldn't have blown the whole pipeline across.
Okay.
That would have been the difference.
All right. I concede. I don't know anything about explosives.
Yeah.
And that was also interesting that they're trying to like show them, carefully creating these incendiary
Explosives,
devices.
incendiaries.
And I don't think you're allowed to show so much. So there was a lot of like high tension scraping and weighing powders with knives and stuff like that you would never use if you were putting together an actual bomb. But they're using knives to like escalate tension because they can't really show what they're doing.
In the end, it was interesting to see that it was a low budget film about basically Antifa. That's the essential thing that they're going for at the end of the movie is we've done this revolutionary thing. Now here are all these little grassroots groups that are coming out and they're going to take it to the man. And it's going to start a revolution.
That it was starting a revolution.
Yeah, that was the point. And it's like, whatever. Big talk?
Big talk. So you and I also went to an evangelization workshop this past week.
Yeah.
It was great. We had a baby, so some of it we each missed.
Yes. I'd say I knew it was great, but she was just fussy. So I caught bits and pieces.
She was a handful.
Yeah.
So rather than try to re-encapsulate everything we learned, which is like a lot, it would be too much.
We don't have enough time.
One of the recommendations was to be more intentional about accompanying people into the heart of Jesus, that you have to be intentional about how you spend time together and especially opening the opportunity for like meaningful conversation instead of just like everyone talks about whatever movie they saw, whatever happened this past week, or has the same repeated conversation again and again, which, definitely I can fall victim to. Yeah, I think we all do. They gave us 99 questions that are wondering questions. So it's something that you can ask any of these questions and like jumpstart like a meaningful conversation. Right. And they're very interesting questions, like stuff you want to have a conversation about.
Yeah, so he used I thought a really good example of it's the importance of these questions is like you said, to engage in a more deeper level, but he used the analogy of when you're doing search and rescue in the ocean. You're scanning about trying to find something, right? Because it's just a sea of blah, right? It's all nothingness. And so then when you get to something, you're using these questions basically to try to find something of importance, like the person that's in the sea that needs to be rescued or whatever.
Yeah, you're like zooming in on something that, and the idea is you're trying to be intentionally docile to the Holy Spirit when you're asking the questions as well.
Yeah.
So we decided we're going to LARP this thing.
Yep.
That was your phraseology, not mine.
Yes.
And so I did ask you to pick out a question to use, which is not what you would, of course, do with someone.
No.
You wouldn't hand them the sheet and be like, what question do you want to wonder about?
Yeah, no, that
you
doesn't
would
work.
Kind of like discern with the Holy Spirit. But anyway, I said, why don't you discern with the Holy Spirit what question you want to be asked? And then I'm going to attempt to actually implement some of the lessons that we learned. Probably terribly, but
That's okay.
That's what a LARPing is for. So, which gender do you think has the tougher path in life?
Feminine.
Oh, what causes you to... That was really rapid. Why would you say women have the tougher role in life?
Because you have to push a baby out of your hoo-ha. I mean,
So
it's something men don't have to do. I think, like for men, we can be a lot more straightforward in the world versus like a woman. It's a more reserved nature. Like when I want to solve a problem, I can just solve the problem. But for a woman, that isn't the way it works. Like it's a circuitous path. Like from my perspective as a man.
All right.
So I think that being a woman is actually a little bit more difficult in this society to be, to live. Does that make sense?
Yes. So, like, you kind of mentioned a couple of reasons why it's hard to be a woman or you think women have the harder role. It's very interesting to me. How does that change the way that you like act? Do you reflect on, you know, in your interactions with women, like that they have to go through some harder things? Like, does it change your behavior as a man?
I don't know if I've ever thought about that.
Interesting.
Yeah, I think I just always have, and maybe it's the cultural lens that I'm thinking of, but I always just felt like for women to do things in society, it's been more difficult. I don't know if I necessarily sympathize with that. I mean, maybe I do, and it's just kind of always been there, underlying. I mean, growing up, had a single parent. You know, my mom had to do everything, all of those, all the tasks, right? So, I guess I've always been rather sympathetic towards women, knowing that like it's not an easy task to pick up the ball and do a lot of things.
Do you think that you're kind of in a more unique situation when it comes to like other men? I mean, is there a difference between men and women in that way? Do you think that other men see that difficulty?
I don't think a lot of men do. And I don't know if it's just because of upbringing or just the way that a lot of men are. I think a lot of men were oblivious to the complexities of like the brain of a woman. Right? I mean, the Hunger Games is a great example, right? When you
I'm
think
really
of
interested
Katniss,
in
right?
this. Yeah.
She's like, you're stuck in her head, and oh my goodness, it's like being in a hurricane. It just doesn't make any sense, and why is the wind whipping that way when it should be whipping that way? You know, it just doesn't make sense to a guy at all. So I think in many respects we're like oblivious, and you know I am all the time when you have a problem and I'm like, just do this. You're like, that's not the answer. And I'm like, okay, A to B is not the way we're going to get there. All right. You know, it's just like, I think guys that's how we're wired, you know. So, but I do know from my own experience, like even in work, when I have a client, like a building committee, I much prefer that there's actually a woman on the team, because the difference is, you know, the woman is going to ask a lot of why questions, and the guys really just ask the what questions and the where questions. Like, what do we need to do and where does it need to go? Okay, we've solved this problem. Why are we still in this meeting? Let's move on. And, you know, as the architect, I'm kind of saying, well, but we need to talk about beauty and how the experience is. And they're like, but I just need to get A to B. You told me my task is to get these people from here to there, and I just told you how to do it. Why are we still talking about it?
Oh.
You know, it's your job to do the beauty thing. I don't need to know.
Is
just do it.
What kind of people tend to like be in that situation, in that conversation? Is it the like folks that you're working for? Is it the contractors? I know you do architecture.
It's
so.
the building committee, you know. So
Oh,
I'm just talking
okay.
like at a building committee, if we have to solve an issue or we're trying to define why we're doing something the way we're doing it. The men in the room tend to just say, here's the answer. Why are we still talking about this? Like very, very pragmatic in the approach, versus when there's a woman in the room talking about the question, we get into the more of the, well, why are we doing this? And what is the effect on others? And, you know, kind of the conversation has a little bit more in depth, for lack of a better word, floral nature to it. Like, you stop and you smell the flowers and you understand, well, why does it smell that way? Or why do we do something a certain way? Why do we pick this paint color? Why do we need to look at 3 different paint colors? Like, the guy's just like, beige is good. Okay, moving on. What's the next thing we need to solve? You know? Like,
yeah.
That's just, it's the difference between genders.
Why would you say that approach is different? Like, why is it so distinct between the genders?
I would assume that just has to do with the way God created us, our nature. Like, uh, men tend to be the ones that have to protect and solve the problems like this in danger, and women have to be the ones to nurture and grow, like
Oof, those
literal
are,
humans,
yeah,
right?
well,
You know,
dangerous words nowadays, nurturing and growing and things,
right?
because it just, I don't think you mean it this way, but like people will start to think that's just in the biological sense, like that you're just
Yeah.
supposed to be a little like human making factory
Right.
in
And
like
that's
the worst interpretation
right,
of
right, right.
femininity.
Yeah, and that's not what I mean at all. I mean that without women, we can't really solve the problem. Men, when we solve the problem, it's like being on the battlefield and somebody just blew off their leg, and we have to solve the problem. We got to cut it off. We got to solder it, and we're done. We got to move to the next thing. That's not how women approach that problem, because the woman knows that there is going to be trauma, that person's going to need somebody to walk alongside them so that they can recover from it and then do something effective in society again.
So that actually kind of goes back to why you were saying that it's helpful to have a woman, or it would be nice to have a woman in these building committees sometimes.
Yes.
Because you just said, the men are solving the immediate problem,
Yeah.
and the women are actually thinking like several steps into the future about like the situation while simultaneously responding in the moment. Do you think that means that women in the moment aren't as good like at responding like just with the data set and getting the job done, like no thinking about the future?
Sometimes. Yeah, I'd say like the inverse of that is when you have a committee of all women. You will never get to the answer, because we'll just sit here and discuss and talk about the why, but we never get to what must we do and get it done. And so you'll just continue, and then there's going to be too many opinions of why we should do something the way we do it. And then, yeah, I think you got to have a balance. When we're talking about the building committee as an example of that,
Is it just out of curiosity? I mean, you haven't been on every building committee,
No.
And you are involved in quite a few. Do you have some committees that are like a mix of men and women, or does it tend to be just men?
No, I have a mix.
Okay.
Yeah, it depends on the pastor and who they're bringing in.
And
but
who's raised their hand, probably.
to some degree. I think a lot of the times the pastor, a good pastor is looking at his flock of people, and he knows that they have gifts, right? It's one of his gifts is to identify and see the gifts of his people and how they could do that within the church, right? The mystical body of Christ. Who's going to do what in the right ways? So I think that a lot of pastors can identify that, and so they're like, I know I need these people to be a part of this conversation because they're going to bring the right tools to the table. Not all the time, but a lot of times I think that can happen. And it might even start on like the superficial side of like, all right, I know that the guy knows how to build it, but we also need somebody who's going to make it feel like a home on the inside, which the guys can't do.
Yeah. Do you think pastors think about that? Yeah, I would say that's probably a very like feminine trait. This female, set aside, because I'm not like very skilled in that particular area. But do you think
make
pastors?
Our house a home. You do.
Do you think pastors really think about that being on the list of like the bullets when they assemble these building committees? Like,
I think so.
Okay.
Yeah.
And so they include people that would
and sometimes
be helpful?
it's a husband and wife, that bring that aspect into the committee. That happens too. But yeah, I think it's a good example of the difference between men and women.
How would you ever consider, like when you're talking to an all-men group, like, I don't know, asking them to bring a woman on, or is that just so outside of your role that it would be really uncomfortable?
It's outside of my role. Like,
could you help them understand that it'd be beneficial?
Yeah, at the beginning, if we were, talking with a priest and or a pastor, and they have an idea of what they want to do and they haven't gone through the process, then we might be able to advise, like, okay, here's the type of people you should be looking for, both men and women. And there's always a conversation of like, how big do you want the committee to be? Because too big becomes unruly and you get mediocrity. But too small, and then you don't quite get to the beauty.
Yeah.
You don't get a in-depth enough conversation.
Oh, it's interesting because it seems like in a lot of places in life, there's a wonderful partnership to be had if you have men and women cooperating together in kind of our best elements, focusing on our like highest, best parts of what our skill set offers.
Yeah.
And you acknowledge that you feel like our nature is from God. Is this like a conversation you'd ever have with other dudes, or is this just something that you would never even think about talking about?
We'd have the conversation. There'd probably be scotch involved, maybe some cigars, and it would be a little bit of a different tune, but
Yeah.
I think we could get to some understanding of it. But again, I think it's like a lot of guys don't. This conversation can't really happen, and unless I think if they're married, I think it's a lot easier to have the conversation. But if they're not married, it's like probably like an iceberg. They have a understanding there's something there, but they don't realize how deep the conversation can go in understanding womanhood versus manhood.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Wow. I think
Was that a good LARPing for you?
It was. It's a strange LARPing experience in that, like, without you coming to the seat with like a character in mind, which I feel like would be so artificial, it would be useless.
Yeah.
You're at a stage in your spiritual development that, like, zooming in on what what God is trying to move the conversation toward was like kind of hard for me. Plus, knowing you so well. I think it would be a lot easier to zoom in if you were truly having a conversation with someone that you didn't know as well.
See, I would say it's the opposite of that.
You think so?
I think completely the opposite, because if we were to have that kind of a conversation and you and I didn't know one another, I'm going to be much more guarded in what I actually say to you. I'm not going to be that open and honest and free.
And the fact that I'm a woman already. I feel like if you were
yeah. If you'd asked that question and been like, danger, danger, danger. What am I getting myself into? Where's the shovel? Oh, it's right there. Yeah. I think women, definitely it's the harder gender. Yeah, you've got a hard time. Can we change the subject?
Yeah.
I would avoid it.
Yeah, I would probably agree that women have the harder role, but some of it is like a self-inflicted, that like we are trying to not only be like excellent women, but in our society we're also trying to be like little men and trying to be the best of all the genders, and like there's so much pressure that like the woman boss has to like be out there, and it's just really
right. Secular society has skewed, because as you and I know, it's the secular world is the whole purpose is to destroy the family.
Yeah.
To destroy the identity of manhood and womanhood.
Yeah.
Because when those are destroyed, then there is complete utter chaos.
Yeah, instead of like letting women do what we're good at by nature, acknowledging the fact that God gives us all special skills, and in some ways women might outshine men in some areas, and the vice versa. Can happen on a case by case, but we have a nature that's receptive.
Right.
And now we're not only trying to be, we're not trying to be receptive, we're trying to be dominant in society as women. There's so much pressure to be dominant, regardless of whether you want to be dominant or not. I think it's hard to be a woman in this time.
Yeah, I agree. I think maybe we'll talk about it in another podcast, but I want you to watch the Dungeons and Dragons movie that just came out. And get your take on that exact question.
We'll just keep watching movies.
That's
and movies.
My goal. Birthday week, we should watch as many movies as possible.
Yep. Well, happy birthday, my love.
Thank you.
May the Lord guide and direct our journey.
Amen.
I want to go change this girl's diaper.
Okay. think I hit the wrong button.
Hopefully you didn't delete everything.
I don't think I did. Bye, y'all.